So today we're going to learn about ascension. So what is ascension? Ascension, in my definition, means transforming your physical body into a body of light. That means that the physical body transforms and changes from its material state into a subtler and subtler state until we become a light being and we inhabit a light body. Now, there aren't very many people who have been able to do this. However, in the Buddhist tradition, for example, Tibetan Buddhism, they claim that tens of thousands of their monks and nuns have attained this state. They call it the rainbow body. And here in the West, we just basically call it ascension. And there are the ascended masters that we usually think about are Jesus, Mary, Saint Germain, Babaji. Today we're going to talk about ascended masters from all over the world, and we're going to learn more about ascension, what it means, if it's possible for us to attain that, and those who have been able to attain this extraordinary state. Ascension is a state of immortality. Once your body has been transformed into a light body, then you're able to appear anytime to anyone, anywhere, and you can take any form. So many of you, I'm sure, have had ascended master visitations. That means that some stranger suddenly came up to you in the middle of nowhere when you were in trouble, or otherwise, maybe you weren't in trouble, but someone just came up to you and gave you a message or helped you in some way, and then they seemed to disappear. I mean, they didn't necessarily disappear in a poof of light or something like that, but they went away, and maybe when you looked for them later, they just didn't seem to be there. So I've had many of these ascended master visitations myself. Well, when I say many, you know, I've had maybe 8. That isn't a lot, but it's more than 0. So I've had several ascended master visitations, and I'm sure that you have too, especially when you hear, you know, what that really means. It means someone just comes up to you and tells you something that changes the course of your life. Or it seems like this stranger who suddenly appeared from nowhere and talked to you, gave you some message that you really needed to hear. And it didn't seem like there was a regular human being. Maybe it was something like an ascended master or an angel or something like that. So, all right, so let's talk more about ascension here. So ascension is, it's about these ascended beings of light, and many people call them the White Brotherhood. And people misinterpret that. They think it has something to do with the color of your skin or something, you know, but it has nothing to do with that. So in the 18th century, Karl van Eckartshausen wrote something called The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. He was the first in the West to write about the secret organization of enlightened mystics in ascended bodies after physical death. And he called this organization, which sometimes we call it the White Brotherhood, he called it the Council of Light. And these beings who are in the Council of Light are guiding the spiritual development of humanity. And sometimes they intervene in humanity as well, these ascended beings of light. Later, Madame Blavatsky, who was the founder of the Theosophical Society, she called them the Masters of the Hidden Brotherhood, or the Mahatmas. So Jesus, and by the way, these photos, these paintings, I actually did these paintings myself. I'm an artist, and I like to draw pictures. So I've done pictures of many ascended masters. In fact, you can find them on my website as well at drsusan.org. So this is my little picture of Jesus that I drew, who is probably the most famous ascended master that we know about. And obviously, they talk about Jesus' ascension. It's talked about in the Bible, and how he appeared to his disciples. even after he ascended, and they could touch him. And in fact, he ate with them. Now, that's interesting because almost every ascended master visitation that I've had, the master who came ate with me. So that is that often happens just so that the master will show you that they are indeed in a corporeal form and not just a ghost of some kind. So Jesus came, appeared to his disciples, and people believe that he is immortal, that he is an ascended being of light, and I agree. So this is a picture of a being of light. His name is Konar. And when Jesus had his what they call lost years, he traveled around the world, and he spent quite a bit of time in India, and he also went to Persia. And this being, Konar was one of his teachers, actually. But there was a Russian physician named Nicholas Notovich, and he wrote in a book called The Unknown Life of Christ in 1984. He actually wrote about this Buddhist convent near Leh. It's in Himas near Leh, which is in the Himalayas in India. It is the capital of Ladakh, India. And there are 2 ancient volumes with over 200 verses. It's called The Life of Saint Issa. And that manuscript is about Jesus's lost years from age 13 to 29. So Jesus spent 6 years in Varanasi, Rajagriha, Jagannath Temple in Orissa, and other holy cities. He also studied the Vedas, and he went to Nepal, Tibet, Persia, and he taught, while he was in India and those other countries, he taught monism, and he had denounced idolatry. He returned to Jerusalem at age 29, and as I said, in Persia, he studied with this master named Konar. Now, one reason we know that Jesus studied in India is because the very first verse of John 1:1 in the Gospels, it said, "In the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." That is an exact quote from an ancient Indian scripture. It's from Krishna Yajurveda, and other Vedic scriptures say the same thing. It says, "In the beginning was Prajapati, who is God the Creator. With him was the Word, and the Word was truly the Supreme Brahman." So basically, it's exactly the same verse, and it came from India. So Jesus learned all of his siddhis, his supernormal powers, when he was in India. Now, Mother Mary is another ascended being. She lifted into heaven by a host of angels, and the Assumption of Mary became an article of faith in Catholicism in 1950, and it's celebrated on August 15th. After her death, she disappeared from her casket, and she was raised, supposedly by Jesus, and left behind a bed of roses. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the Shroud of Turin, or maybe you haven't, which was the shroud that Jesus was wrapped in. And I believe that shroud is real. I believe that, in fact, that was the shroud that was around Jesus. And if you look at the shroud, it looks like a photographic impression of a man. And I believe that that was when he ascended, that there was a bright, brilliant flash of light, which is what is reported in many cases when a person ascends. And it's reported in the Buddhist tradition as well, that when a person ascends, they do disappear in a flash of light. So Mary made her assumption, left behind a bed of roses. There's also a great saint from India named Kabir, who did the same thing, disappeared in a flash of light and left behind a bed of roses in his casket. The next ascended master we want to talk about is Saint Francis. He lived from 1182 to 1226. And this picture that I drew is of him in the Chapel San Damiano. And when he had a vision in this chapel, he transformed his life and renounced all worldly goods. He was from a very wealthy family. And he gave up everything. He gave up all his clothing and the center of the square. And he became a great spiritual leader and eventually had an entire following of monks. And he did a lot to transform Christian religion. Now, when he had this vision in the chapel, he was told, with his eyes filled with tears, he was gazing at the figure of the crucified, and he heard a voice coming from the cross. And the voice said, "Francis, go and repair my church, which, as you see, is falling down." The chapel was falling down, but in fact, it was the entire religion of Christianity that needed to be repaired, which is what he did. So he's also known as an ascended master. Now, Enoch is also an ascended master. He is, from the book of Genesis, talks about Enoch. It says, Enoch walked with God and he was not, for God took him. In other words, he was taken. This is a picture actually of him being transformed, transfigured, translated, ascended, whatever you want to call it. There's several names for ascension. The book of Hebrews says, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony that he pleased God. And in the book of Enoch, there is a book of Enoch. If you want to read it, you can read it on the internet. By the way, that book that I mentioned about Jesus, The Life of Saint Issa, you can also read that on the internet. It's not that hard to find. Just Google The Life of Saint Issa, I-S-S-A, and you can read about the lost years of Jesus. Here's from the book of Enoch. And it came to pass after this that my spirit was translated, and it ascended into the heavens, and I saw the holy sons of God. They were stepping on flames of fire. Their garments were white, and their raiment, and their faces shone like snow. So any of these ascended masters, by the way, you can call upon them, and they can help you in your everyday life. It's actually quite practical use of spirituality to be in touch with the ascended masters and ask them for advice, ask them to help you with problems, and they will. When they're called upon, they will help you, but they do not intervene unless they're called upon. Sometimes they do if it's a dire situation, though. All right, Melchizedek is another ascended master that's talked about in the Bible. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. So Melchizedek gave Abraham a blessing, and Abraham tithed to Melchizedek the spoils of battle. God made a covenant with Abraham that seed would be numberless as the stars in heaven, and his descendants extend from the Nile River to the Euphrates. So Melchizedek is also an ascended master talked about in the Bible, as well as Moses. He was the lawgiver of the Israelites, the author of the Torah, means the first 5 books of the Bible, 5 books of Moses. Moses was born in Egypt around 1391 BC into the tribe of Levi. He freed the Hebrews from the Egyptians who were enslaved. And for 40 years, he led them through the wilderness of Sinai to Canaan, which was the quote-unquote promised land. And at Mount Sinai, he received the 10 Commandments. When they went through the desert, they had the Ark of the Covenant, which was a mystical palanquin where God appeared in a cloud and gave instructions. Now, Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain, and Jesus transfigured into a light being. That's called the transfiguration. And Moses and Elijah appeared at that point in ascended forms. King David is another ascended master. He was the king of Jerusalem. He was born around 1037 BC. And David purchased the land on the Mount Moriah, which is the Dome of the Rock, it's called now. The exposed bedrock of Mount Moriah was known as the drinking stone or water of life. In Judaism, the world, according to Judaism, the world is spiritually nourished from this stone. It's the metaphysical center of the universe, and God's presence is felt most intensely, supposedly, at the Dome of the Rock. That's why everyone is fighting over it all the time. This is a picture of Elijah and his ascension. Elijah is definitely another ascended master and well known especially in the Jewish religion. Elijah performed miracles. He raised the dead. He manifested endless food. He traveled to Jericho with his disciple Elisha to Jordan. And it says in the Bible, Elijah took his mantle, wrapped it together, and smote the waters. Then the river divided. And then he started to ascend into heaven. And Elijah asked Elisha, who is his disciple, he asked him for a final request. Actually, Elisha then said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. So, in fact, he wanted Elijah's spirit to enter into him, which is actually what happened. There appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Then Elisha took Elijah's mantle and smote the waters, and the waters parted, and the sons of the prophets in Jericho met Elisha. The spirit of Elijah doth rest on Elisha. So Elijah's spirit went into Elisha, and then Elisha was able to do the same kinds of miracles that Elijah had previously done. He made the Jordan River potable and the riverbanks fertile. And this was, in fact, what they call a walk-in, or a Parkaya Pradesh, they call it in India, where a spirit goes into another body. So Elisha asked for a double portion of Elijah to go into him, and that's exactly what happened. Elisha became Elijah and continued on with the miracles that Elijah had done previously. In the Jewish religion, it's believed that Elijah is an immortal master. And at the Passover Seder every year, there's always a chair for Elijah that's left. It has a place setting, and they open the door of the house to invite Elijah into the Passover Seder. So that's done in every home of every Jewish person in the world during Passover. And in addition, during the child's bris, where the child is circumcised, there's also, Elijah has to be present for every bris as well. So Elijah is known as an ascended master in Judaism. This is my depiction of the Holy Spirit, the spirit of wholeness within, which is, we aren't just in contact with ascended masters, we're also in contact with divine beings of light. So I made a picture of her. And also the archangels. This is my picture of the archangels. Michael is in the blue ray. He has a flaming blue sword. Jophael is shown with a golden book in the gold ray. Camuel is seen with a pink heart. She's in the pink ray. Gabriel is portrayed with a lily and a pyramid in the white ray. Raphael is in the green ray with a green lantern and the serpent of healing, because Raphael is the healing power. They specialize, these archangels. Uriel is in the red ray with an open hand holding a flame, and Zadkiel is in the violet ray with his symbol, which is the transmuting violet flame. So you can call upon these divine beings of light and ask them to help you. As I said, they're specialists. They specialize in various things, like Gabriel specializes in communication, and Jophiel in wisdom, and Michael in protection and strength, and so on. Okay, so this is Metatron's cube, which wards off demonic energies. And in the Talmud, it's said that Metatron is a heavenly scribe. And Metatron is the crown in the tree of life, the highest in the hierarchy of angels. And according to the Kabbalah, the Metatron forms this cube from his soul. This cube contains the 5 platonic solids, the fruit of life, the Star of David, and the containment circle or creation circle in alchemy. And Metatron, this cube, supposedly led the Israelites through the wilderness. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold right now. So Metatron is supposedly the angel that led the Israelites through the wilderness in the desert. So this is a chart of the archangels and the Elohim. And as I said, this is all from my book, Ascension. So if you get the book, you can get a copy of this chart. Although, I don't know, maybe these DVDs might be available also, or the files from this presentation might be available. So you'll be able to get the chart from that, I hope. So this is a chart of all the archangels, the Elohim, their retreats, the twin flame, the colors, and so on, and the rays. There are twin flames. These do exist. And when you meet your twin flame, it isn't necessarily a happy, joyous experience because your twin flame will mirror back to you exactly who you are. And hopefully you love yourself enough that when you meet your twin flame, you'll be happy at what you see. Now I'm going to talk about Saint Germain. The Comte de Saint Germain, he's a really famous ascended master. I'm sure you've all heard of him. In fact, during Shima's presentation, she called upon Saint Germain during her meditation. So he was the son of the Prince Rakoczy Ferenc. He lived from 1676 to 1735, supposedly. Although he may have faked his death, probably did, because he is an immortal being of light, and he does appear from time to people in various forms. He was the Prince of Transylvania, the national hero of Hungary, and he had diamonds on his rings, diamonds on his watch, his snuff box, his sword, and buckles. His diamonds were worth 200,000 francs. He had no wrinkles ever. He always looked youthful. He consumed no meat or wine. He always dined alone. He was a foremost scholar, linguist, expert in history, chemistry, alchemy, poetry, art, music, and swordsmanship. He spoke every language as though he were a native. He composed music. His portraits that he did as an artist, they showed gemstones, sparkling gemstones that matched the brilliance of the original stones. He removed flaws from diamonds and transformed them into perfect stones for Louis XV. He transformed an ordinary 12-sol piece into gold for Casanova and a silver 6-franc piece into gold in his alchemical furnace for the Marquis de Valvel. He wrote one page with his left hand and one page, the exact duplicate, with his right hand. He was able to write 2 pages exactly. If you put them together and shone a light through them, they matched stroke for stroke, word for word. He could repeat entire contents of a newspaper several days after he read it. He was employed by the French and other European governments as a secret agent and a diplomat. He was a guest of Peter III of Russia, Shah of Persia, of Frederick the Great of Germany, of Voltaire, Madame de Pompadour, Rousseau, Chatham, and Walpole. They were all curious of his origin. And he was known as, according to Voltaire, he was known as a man who knows everything and who never dies. Napoleon formed a special commission to investigate his life. And unfortunately, his collection of memoirs was destroyed in a fire in 1891 in a hotel. He taught alchemy and the secret longevity rites to Count Alessandro Cagliostro, who was the founder of the Egyptian rite of Freemasonry. He was often seen in lotus posture in meditation, and sometimes he retired to the Himalayas. This is Ninon de l'Enclos, and Saint Germain gave some women of the court his, this was the court of Louis XV, and he gave some women an elixir of life, which preserved the energy and beauty of these women for over 25 years. It was called the Philosopher's Stone, and it contained 777 ingredients. The Countess de Genlis and Ninon d'Enclos both received this youth remedy. And Ninon d'Enclos was one of the most beautiful women in France, and she was a controversial author and a courtesan. She was age 80 when her grandson fell in love with her. Now, the French ambassadress Madame de Gergy saw Saint Germain in 1710 in Venice, where he was known as Marquis Belletti. He looked like he was age 45. And at that time, he gave the Madame an elixir that preserved her youth for a very long time. 50 years later, that same woman saw him in Paris. She asked him if he was the Marquise's son. And he said, "I lived in the previous century and am the Marquis himself." She said, "You could not be, because you look younger now than you did then." He said with a smile, "Madam, I am very old." She said he was nearly 100 years old, and he replied, "That is not impossible." So Saint Germain supposedly died in the palace of Prince Karl of Hesse Castle in Eckernford, Germany, on February 27th of 1784. However, the body was seen by no one but Prince Karl. There was no funeral, no will, no heirs, and no one claimed the inheritance. Prince Karl burnt the papers for the fear of being misinterpreted. He burned all of Saint Germain's papers. And when asked about his death, the prince always changed the subject. Many Many people have claimed to see Saint Germain or received letters from him long after his supposed death. This is my painting of Saint Germain. Saint Germain was instrumental in the founding of America, the founding of this country. There was a book called Washington and His Generals, or Legends of the Revolution by George Lippard. And he talks about the founding of America and how Saint Germain appeared at the time that the Declaration of Independence was being drafted. The men who drafted that document, which was treason against King George III of England, the punishment for doing that, for treason, was hanging, disemboweling, and quartering. And so the founding fathers, you know, they weren't real anxious to sign their own death warrants, even though they wanted to gain independence. So they debated in the State House in Philadelphia, and the lower chamber doors were locked. There was a guard posted. No one could get in or out. And Thomas Jefferson spoke bold words, and John Adams poured out his soul. And still the parchment remained unsigned. It was July 4th of 1776. There was a pale-faced man who was very afraid, and he got up and talked about axes, scaffolds, and a gibbet. Suddenly, a tall, slender man stood up with piercing dark eyes. He rose, and his words rang through the hall. And he gave a long speech, which is in the book that I mentioned, the book by George Lippard called Washington and His Generals, or Legends of the Revolution. But at the end of this long speech, he said, "Sign by all your hopes in life or death, as husbands, as fathers, as men, sign your names to that parchment." And all the people in the room, they were so inspired by this magic speaker's look, his passionate voice, his prophet-like beckoning hand, and the magnetic flamed eyes that fired every heart in the entire room. The delegates rushed forward and signed the document, which changed our lives, which changed the country forever. And the signatories turned to express their gratitude to the unknown speaker, but he had vanished. How he entered and left a locked, guarded room is unknown. Signing the Declaration of Independence was a thankless venture. It was very risky, and nearly every signer died bankrupt or had a violent death. It took tremendous courage for these 56 prosperous men to sign away their fortunes and invite capture and certain death. Only a master such as Saint Germain could have inspired them to do such a thing. So this is Saint Germain, my picture of Saint Germain, and he is in his violet flame. You can call upon the violet flame anytime to help you to purify your mind, purify the environment. For example, you could call upon the violet flame to purify your house or to purify whatever place you're in. And it will appear, the violet flame will come and will cleanse the entire area. You just have to ask for it. Everything that I teach is based upon one thing, and that is ask and it shall be given unto you. It's just a matter of asking and then you will receive. This is another chart that I made, which is the various Greek and Roman gods of Olympia. And of course, they all specialize, and you can call upon them as well if you want to get something done or if you want assistance in your life. The goddess Athena, for example, she's the goddess of wisdom. She encourages law and order. She's the all-bedewing, the goddess of moisture, agriculture, and festivals that are celebrated in the rainy season. She's the virgin dawn. She breathes soul into human beings, supposedly. And her first duty is to arouse men from their slumber. She has symbols of the cock and the owl, which are the birds of the morning and night. Those are sacred to her. The Medusa head signifies the starlit night, doomed to die with her arrival at the dawn. She's the Earth Mother, and the snake is sacred to her. She carries an aegis and a golden staff, which symbolize dignity and youth. So she's one of the many gods, goddesses you can call upon. Here's Gaia, my picture of Gaia. She's the primeval earth mother goddess, the mother of the gods, the brother of Eros, born of chaos, the divine principle. She bore the sea, the sky, and the mountains. She married her son Uranus, bore 12 titans, 6 male and 6 female elder gods, and her emblem is the globe. She's the nourisher, the mother of every living thing. She mated with the underworld and bore many demons, the titans. The oaths sworn on the name of Gaia are the most sacred binding oaths. So here's another ascended being, Gaia. Roman goddess, Libertas, Lady Liberty, Lady Liberty. As I said, I personally drew all these pictures. This is my depiction of Lady Liberty. She's the embodiment of freedom. And the first temple to Libertas was built in 238 BC in the Aventine Hill in Rome. And the second temple to Lady Liberty was 57 BC on the Palatine Hill. Also in my book Ascension, I've got another chart on the deities of ancient Egypt. As I said, all of these deities who are deities of all these various religions, they can be called upon. Ancient deities, modern deities, and they all specialize. They all have their specialties. If you want to accomplish something in your life, you can call upon these beings of light and they can assist you. Now I'm going to talk about the white buffalo calf woman. 2,000 years ago, supposedly, the white buffalo calf descended from a cloud. And an Indian girl carrying a sacred bundle appeared and emerged from this white buffalo calf. Supposedly, she spent 4 days with a Lakota, teaching the meaning of the sacred bundle, the sacred songs, the traditional ways, and the 7 sacred ceremonies. Now, she told the Lakota that as long as they continued to perform the ceremonies that she taught them, that they would remain the guardians of the sacred land and they would never die. And she prophesied that with the birth of a white buffalo calf, that she would return to purify the world and bring harmony, balance, and spirituality. Now, when she appeared from that calf, there were 2 warriors and they were out in the field, and one of them got lustful and tried to seduce her. Well, she burnt him to ashes. The other one, who was respectful towards her, she said, go and tell the Lakota that I'm going to come and teach them and give them the sacred bundle and the sacred ceremonies and so on. So he was obedient and he did that. And so she did spend that time with the Lakota. In the Sioux tradition, there's the Wakantanka, or Great Mystery. These are immortal beings who are never born and they never die. They don't take birth and they don't die. They're immortal beings of light. The Great Spirit, the power, life force, and the sacredness within everything is what the Sioux worship. Before creation, Wakantanka was called the Great Emptiness, called Han, or darkness. Feeling lonely, Han created companions, the rock, the earth, the sky, and the sun. So often you'll hear in Indian ceremonies, they call on Wakantanka. This is the fair-skinned, white-bearded god, Quetzalcoatl, the feather serpent, who visited the land, bringing culture, art, science, and wisdom. And it is said that he will return. Born of a virgin birth, inventor of books, the calendar, the giver of maize, and the lord of death and resurrection. The Pahana, fair-skinned, lost white brother, elder brother, Hopi, departed for the east when the nation began migrations during the fourth world, which is the current world cycle. Pahana returns. When Pahana returns, the wicked are destroyed and a new age of peace begins. Wiracocha, the vital energy of the sea, is the invisible god that is worshipped in Peru. The essence of existence represents the universe, the creator, the light giver, created humans, ordered the community's sacred centers, and takes physical manifestation in Father Sun, which is Inti. Panchamama, or Mother Earth, gives life to human beings, is the mother of purification, cleansing, and pardon, bestows only laws needed by humanity, the law of unconditional love, the virtue, service, or work, and the value, knowledge. I'm going to talk about some ascended beings from India. This gentleman, it's pretty interesting. His name is Brahma Rishi Yogi Raj Devaraha Baba. He was over 800 years old when he made his ascension in 1990. He was the direct disciple, in other words, his guru. I'm not even going to say his guru's name because it's too complicated, but his guru lived from 1016 to 1137. In other words, he taught this man when he was alive. Okay? Now, Devaraha Baba, this man you're seeing and looking at right now, he was very famous in India. He was visited by all the presidents, all the Gandhis, the prime ministers, the rulers, the politicians. They all sought him out for advice and for spiritual teaching. King George V visited him in 1910. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who was India's first president, he met him in the early 1900s. And when Rajendra Prasad's father took him to see this saint. At that time, Devaraha Baba, this guy you're looking at, he was already an elderly man when Rajendra Prasad's father met him in the mid-1800s. June 19th, 1990 was when Devaraha Baba relinquished his body and had his ascension. Disappeared. Now, what happened then? Well, his disciple, known as Hans Baba, he was his priest in his Radha Krishna temple in his ashram. This man, Hans Baba, underwent a metamorphosis. His appearance and his behavior changed. He began to physically resemble his guru, Devraha Baba, and also he ascended the platform or munch where his guru always used to sit, which was controversial. People thought, well, what, do you have the right to do that? You're not him. Well, he was him, actually. If you look, you see Devraha Baba, and then you see Devraha Hans Baba. If you look, you see they look like the same person. One's older, but they look the same. So Devraha Baba's soul underwent what we call Parkaya Pradesh, or transmigration of the soul. Remember, I talked about walk-in, being a walk-in. So the soul transmigrated from the elderly guy who ascended into the younger guy, into his disciple, Hans Baba, who carried on his teaching. Now, I met Hans Devraha Baba several times. I didn't ever meet the elderly gentleman, but I met the younger gentleman, who's also elderly, but younger than the other one. The other one was 800 years old. So I met the younger one in August 2001 in Jaipur. And I witnessed something kind of extraordinary. A woman from Jaipur stood before him. He was sitting up on his platform, and the woman stood before him, and Hans Baba greeted her by name and he said to her, I remember meeting you at the Kumbh Mela 12 years ago in 1989. That's a big festival. So he said he had met her 12 years ago in 1989. The woman answered, yes, I met Devaraha there. The younger, the Hans Baba, he wasn't at that festival. He wasn't there. It was the elderly that was at the festival. And she met him there. And she had never visited Jaipur before, but yet Hans Baba knew her. He recognized her, he called her by name. So one time when I met Hans Baba, I asked him for a statement, something I could write in one of my books. And he said, this is what he said. He said, the world cannot be run through anguish, anger, and hatred. Connect with each other and find the right people who can spread love and peace in the world. Connect those people together in a global family. The right people should come forward. Now here's another amazing fellow I met in India. His name is Sri Sri 108, His Holiness Swami Prakashananji Maharaj. When I met him, I looked at his passport. He showed me his passport. His passport said that he was born in 1892. And the Queen of Nepal, her name was Queen Aishwarya. She was the Queen of Nepal. She was there with me when I went to visit him. And she claimed that he has to be at least 150 years old because her grandfather knew him in the early 20th century. This guy still drives a car, and he drove to Delhi from his ashram in Jageshwar to get his passport. So I witnessed all of this. I can attest, I saw the passport. Here's another picture of him. Born in 1892, what do you think? I mean, he looks like he's about the same age as I am, actually. All right, my next Indian master that I'm going to talk about. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot to mention something about, something more about Teep Maharaj. He's called Teep Maharaj. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. At age 4, he left for Hardwar and became an ascetic. In the Himalayas and in Varanasi, he learned Sanskrit, Hindi, English, and he studied the ancient scriptures. At age 20, he moved to Gaumukh, which is the source of the Ganges, up in the Himalayas, where the Ganges starts. It's called Gangotri or Gaumukh. He descended the Himalayan foothills in a forest, the Teep forest, and for 30 years he meditated in a cave. Tigers and other wild animals guarded the entrance to the cave. And in 1927, the British government granted the forest of Teep to him and gave him the title, His Holiness Maharaj of Teep. Teep Maharaja, he traveled the entire length and breadth of India. He visited Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Nepal, and Burma, all on foot. He trekked on foot in every pilgrimage, wearing a loincloth and barefoot, even at 14,000 feet. In 1960, he settled next to the 4,000-year-old Jageshwar temple, which is the only temple where Lord Shiva is worshipped as Mahamrityunjay, the great conquering of death. Okay, next master from India again. This is Ramakrishna Paramahansa. He was my guru in a past life. I remember being with him and sitting at his feet. When I went to visit the Vivekananda Rock, which is the very tip of South India, and I saw his portrait there, I was deeply moved, deeply touched as I recalled the past life memories of being with him. He lived from 1836 to 1887. He was born in West Bengal. His first ecstatic mystical experience was at age 6. He was a priest of a Kali temple. He had a great fervor and passion and devotion to Kali, goddess, one of the goddesses of India. He was always absorbed in meditation. In fact, his name, Paramahansa Ramakrishna, meaning, actually Paramahansa means always absorbed in meditation. He was known for accepting and promoting all religious faiths. In fact, during his lifetime, I read a biography about him, during his lifetime, he practiced every faith that he could. He practiced Judaism, Christianity, Muslim, Islam, everything. He practiced every faith. His marriage to Sarada Devi was an ideal spiritual union. Now, this is what he says. This is a quote from Ramakrishna. Consciously or unconsciously, in whatever way one falls into the trough of nectar, one becomes immortal. Similarly, whosoever utters the name of the deity voluntarily or involuntarily finds immortality in the end. Now, one of the practices that Ramakrishna did was a tantric practice called Avishkara. It's called the great mood of perfect serenity. And if you've seen Amachi, the hugging saint, the lady hugging saint, she does that practice. She does Devi Bhava, where she becomes the Divine Mother. Well, he used to do that also. In fact, he would dress in a sari and become the Divine Mother and go into that ecstatic state as Amaji does. The practice, as I said, is called Avishkara, and in which a saint, such as Ramakrishna here, would embody completely the deity. And the deity would be the Divine Mother. This is a picture of the Divine Mother, Durga. And she's a deity from India who rides on a tiger or a lion. And her yantra or symbol is in that blue circle there. She represents Shakti, meaning the power of God. She's worshipped by tantrics. And tantrics, their practice usually is about awakening Kundalini, Shakti, the power that's coiled at the base of the spine, which when it goes up through the Sushumna Nadi, which is a subtle conduit of energy, goes up through the spine, all the way from the base of the spine to the top of the head. And when Kundalini rises up and unites with Shiva at the crown chakra above the head, then the aspirant attains yoga or union with God. Another great ascended master is Babji. Many of you have heard of Babaji. Babaji is a very common appellation in India. It just means father, a respected father. However, there are thousands of saints who are called Babaji as well. Millions of people are called Babaji because, children call their father Babaji. But there is only one immortal Mahamuni, Maha-avatar Babaji that people speak of as being sometimes called the Yogi Christ. That's what Yogananda called him. Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote the book Autobiography of a Yogi, named Babaji the Yogi Christ. Babaji was the guru of the guru of the guru of Yogananda. Yogananda's guru was called Yukteswara. Yukteswara's guru was called Lahiri Mahasya, and Lahiri Mahasya's guru was called Babaji. So Babaji, immortal being of light, he has appeared to me on several occasions. He is my inner teacher. He's my main teacher who communicates with me. He's the one that has given me my teaching of divine revelation, and he's given me so many great blessings. He's appeared to me in physical form a few times, and he's a great, great master. He usually appears at around 25 years old and has a youthful, very strong body, dark, lustreless eyes, long hair, requires no food. He's an immortal being of light. Supposedly lives in Badranath, Himalayas, and a few miles from the south, from the Tibetan borders, the south border, on the Alakananda River. There's a large cave facing two waterfalls near Badranath, and his ashram is surrounded by sheer rock cliffs and a row of caves at the base. And there's an invisible, mysterious 1 mile perimeter that surrounds the area, and visitors just can't come in without his permission. So he can obviously manifest anybody he wants, anytime, anywhere, to anyone. And if you call upon him, just call upon Babaji, he will assist you. He'll especially assist you when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to your evolution, when it comes to your own attainment of higher consciousness and enlightenment. So he is the great Babji. This was his guru's guru, Lahiri Mahasya. Lahiri Mahasya was very extraordinary himself. One day when he was meeting a group of disciples, he sent one of his disciples, Ram Gopal, to bathe in the Ganges, actually to go to the bathing ghat, which is the platform. It's actually, there's steps that go down to the river. And he told his disciple Ram Gopal to go to the bathing ghat on the Ganges. And Ram Gopal waited by the river and is like, what am I doing here? He waited quite a long time. And suddenly, as he was waiting by the river, a huge stone slab lifted and hovered, suspended in air. Babaji's sister, Babaji has a sister, her name's Mataji. She levitated from and came up from this underground cave. And then, as Ram Gopal was watching, Lahiri Mahasya, this saint whom you're looking at right now, he appeared, he just kind of hovered over the Ganges River, and he appeared in a shining ball of light. And then Babaji came, and he appeared like a whirlpool light from the cosmos. So at that point, Babji told his sister that he decided that he would shed his corporeal form and leave the planet. And they discussed it for a while, and she asked him not to do that. And she said to him, what is the difference if I wear a visible or invisible wave on the ocean of my spirit? I'm sorry, he said that. What's the difference if I wear a visible or invisible wave on the ocean of my spirit? And she said, Mataji said, since it doesn't make any difference and I am asking you to stay, then will you stay? So Babaji, at that point, Babaji committed to remain in an immortal body on this planet forever, which is kind of cool. That's from the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. If you have not read that book, I highly recommend that you read it. This is a picture of Markandeya, who's another immortal being. I mean, in India, there's quite a number of immortal saints and immortal beings, and Markandeya is one of them. His story was that Lord Shiva blessed a childless couple. They couldn't have a child, and they blessed him with a child, with a son. They prophesied that the son would not live past 16. Lord Shiva sent him to a temple in Tamil Nadu to worship him. And as Markandeya was turning 16, Yama, the Lord of Death, came to claim him. So let's see. Yama is the one in the picture with the red, he's wearing a red pants. And Lord Shiva is the one with the big halo around his head. So Markandeya came to claim him, and Yama, the Lord of Death, came to claim Markandeya, and Markandeya embraced the Shiva Linga, which is, you see he's hugging that stone there in the temple. And the enraged Yama threw a noose around Markandeya and the Linga and tried to pull them together. But Lord Shiva emerged from the Linga and destroyed Yama instantly. And Shiva promised Markandeya that he would be immortal and ever remain age 16. So Markandeya is known as this immortal being, and there's a mantra that's used, which is literally the great conquering of death is the mantra. So it's a prayer to overcome death, and that prayer, when translated into English, goes like this, if you want to use this prayer to overcome death. We worship Lord Shiva, the three-eyed one, who is Fragran and who nourishes all beings. As the ripened cucumber is liberated from its bondage to the vine, may he liberate me from death for immortality. So that's the Markandeya mantra in English. In my book, Ascension, it's also written in Sanskrit. Now here's a really interesting gentleman. His name is Ramalinga Swami. And Ramalinga Swami lived in the 1800s, 1823 to 1874. And at age 5, he began to compose beautiful devotional poetry. At age 12, he began teaching in the temple. He was considered an incarnation of divine wisdom. He had advanced scriptural knowledge through grace and through meditation. Whoops, what happened? There he is. He had no formal education. He was married at age 27, and his wife remained a virgin. He founded a charity house in Tamil Nadu in South India. And it was in Vadalur. I went there, by the way. I visited this place. And he founded it in 1867, and that place lodged travelers and fed the needy, fed the elders, gave medical treatment to the poor. And he had a very simple, gentle, and loving teaching that focused on devotion, kindness, and compassion for all beings. His collection of poetry, called The Divine Song of Grace, talked about how he transformed his body, his mortal body, transformed into a golden hue, then a body of love, a body of grace, or body of light. And his body transformed into a light body, in other words, and this new body was imperceptible to touch, imperishable, and unaffected by the environment. Now, this is a quote from him. I prayed for an effulgent body that would endure forever against wind, earth, sky, fire, water, sun, moon, death, disease, weapons of killing, planets, injuries of evil deeds, or anything else. He later fulfilled my prayers, and I have such a body. Think it not a mean gift, O people. Seek refuge in my Father, who is the Lord of the beatific splendor that immortalizes even the material body. So his disciples tried to photograph him. This is a painting of him, obviously. This is not a photograph. So they tried to photograph him, and nothing appeared on the photographic plate except his clothing. His body cast no shadow. So he always covered his head so that covered his head so that he would cast a shadow. So he always covered his head and his entire body with white cloth. He was slender, medium height, with a long, sharp nose and large, serene eyes that emitted divine brilliance. He ate only once every 2 or 3 days. Now, I visited this place in Vadalur in South India. And I visited this, which is called the Mansion of the Miracle. It's a small hut. And in January 30th, 1874, he told his disciples that he was going to ascend. He was not going to hang around anymore. He was going to disappear. And he would be leaving to enter all bodies of God's creation. He told his disciples to padlock the door from the outside and keep the oil lamp burning, the temple lamp burning, forever. And he said that if the room were opened later, it would be empty. So he went into that room, and they padlocked the door, and there was no egress, there was no window, there was nothing, couldn't get out of that room. And later that night, the devotees were chanting outside the room, and suddenly they saw a flash of violet light emanating from under his door of that room. The next morning, when they opened the room, he had vanished. Nothing there. The police were called, and by the way, when I was down there, I saw the police, I saw the newspaper articles, I saw the police report, everything. The police, after searching the area and examining the building, they declared that the Swami had vanished into thin air. I think that could only happen in India, where the police would say somebody vanished into thin air. In July of 1882, Madame Blavatsky stated in her Theosophic magazine that Ramalinga Swami was the forerunner of the Theosophical movement. So obviously she must have known him, must have visited him, or known about him anyway. This is a picture of Lord Krishna, who is what's known as an avatar. An avatar is different from an ascension. Avatar means that the person is an incarnation of God. So Lord Krishna, for example, was an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. What does that mean? It means that God appears in human form, in human flesh, and that the person who appears does not have to take human birth necessarily, and can simply appear and take a human form. So avatars can do that. They can also take human birth. It's possible they can appear as a human, being born of a human woman. So the word avatar means descent in Sanskrit. It's a divine incarnation, God in embodied form. And avatars usually appear when the earth requires divine intervention. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very famous scripture from India, he says, "For the protection of the virtuous, for the destruction of evildoers, and for firmly establishing righteousness and virtue, I am born from age to age. My birth and activities are divine. He who knows this in reality does not take birth again on leaving his body, but comes to me." So this is my picture of Lord Krishna. Now here's a picture of all of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu, all 10 incarnations of Lord Vishnu. And one of these is Lord Buddha. You see Lord Buddha is one of them, and Narayana, and several others. The last one, Kalki on the white horse, is supposedly the incarnation of Lord Vishnu that comes at the end of the what we call the Kali Yuga, which is the cycle of creation that we're in right now. Now this is from the Chinese tradition, or Taoist tradition actually. So we've moved from India, we're now in China. And these are what is known as the 8 immortals of China. Supposedly these 8 beings of light, these 8 immortals, still around, still alive, immortal beings of light. The ancient Taoist tradition in China reveres 8 immortal sages. And these sages, you'll find them all over China in homes, in grottos, in temples, in Chinese restaurants. And they also represent the 8 trigrams of the I Ching, which you see there in the picture that I drew. And each of these 8 immortals has a specific kind of theme and specific energies, and can be called upon to assist in various situations. And if you want to learn more about them, you can either Google them or get my book Ascension and find out more about them. I don't have time to go through each one of them at this time. Now this is a picture of Ardhanarishvara, who is also an immortal being. And Ardhanarishvara is a combination of Shiva and Shakti. You see Shiva, which is the male figure on one side, and Shakti, the female figure on the other side of this person, or being of light, Ardhanarishvara. Now, if you have problems with your relationships, Ardhanarishvara is a good one to call upon. I'm talking about love relationships between male and female, and sexual relationships. So, Ardhanarishvara is the name of this deity. The 5 Buddhas, great Buddhas of wisdom, primordial Buddhas. These are the central deities of Mahayana Buddhism. Each represents a different aspect of enlightened consciousness and spiritual transformation. And these are represented in Buddhist art and mandalas and tankas. Here is a chart about the 5 Buddhas. Each Buddha overcomes a specific evil with a particular good, and each has a complete system of symbolism. This represents one of the Buddhist images named Gantapa from the 9th century. That means bearer of the bell. And he rose into heaven with his young consort. And they became the deities Padmasambhava and Vajravarani in joined union. Once again, this is also an image about male-female energies uniting. And these could be called upon, once again, if you need help with your relationships. These are one of the 84 great siddhas from India that founded the Buddhist tantric lineages of Tibet. Nearly all of them lived many centuries, then left the earth by ascending bodily into heaven. This is Kuan Yin. Her name literally means one who hears the cries of the world. I'm saying her, but Kuan Yin is often female, often male. But she is the most popular religious figure in China. She embodies the female form of Bodhisattva, which means enlightened being. Avalokiteshvara, born from a tear shed by Lord Buddha at the sight of humanity's suffering. So she's the goddess of mercy and compassion, and she helps people escape impossible or awkward situations. She's often portrayed rescuing the Jade Emperor's various predicaments. So she is really the goddess of compassion, and you can call upon her whenever you need help in any situation. She embodies tremendous love and compassion. Lao Tzu, the founder of the Tao Chia school Taoism, kept his identity secret in order to test his students. His name means old master. He wrote the Tao Te Ching, which is the founding Taoist philosophy. And its message is about living a simple life in moderation and peacefulness in tune with natural law. Supposedly, this is where Lao Tzu lives, in a magical fertile mountain, Hua Shan, the western mountain or flower mountain. Towards the summit is his temple. In front of the temple is the great furnace that Lao Tzu created, the pill of immortality, where he supposedly created the pill of immortality. And mushrooms growing on this mountain are sacred, and they are believed to grant immortality. One thing about Lao Tzu is he knew all the secrets of immortality and the various plant medicine that you could use to attain immortality. Now this Chinese herbalist, Master Li Qing Yuan, he was born in 1677. At age 11, he joined 3 traveling herbalists, and he learned about medicinal herbs and journeyed to the high mountains. He encountered many wild animals and so on. He actually studied with this herbalist who moved fast, very fast, and ate goji berries or wolfberry fruit daily. And Li took the advice of this herbalist. Li ended up marrying 14 times. He had 180 descendants in 11 generations. He lived for 11 generations, in other words. He was born in 1677. At age 71, in 1749, he joined the Chinese army and taught martial arts as a tactical advisor. At age 130, he met a 500-year-old Taoist who taught him an exercise called Bagua. He sold medicinal herbs and taught disciples in China, and his disciples were all lived over 100 years. When Master Li attained age 248, he still had good eyesight and a quick stride. This is real. I mean, this is a photograph you're looking at, actually. In 1927, General Yang Shen wrote something called A Factual Account of the 250-Year-Old Good Luck Man. And this photo was taken in 1927, photo you're looking at. The New York Times reported his death on May 6th of 1933. At his death, he looked like he was about 50 years old. You want to hear his secret? His secret is, he said, one should have a quiet heart, sit calmly like a tortoise, walk sprightly like a pigeon, and sleep soundly like a dog. He attributed his longevity to peace of mind. He said that if you attain inner calm, you can live at least a century. These are just some pictures of various beings of light. And here we have Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky was the founder of the Theosophical Society and the author of The Secret Doctrine. She was born in 1831 in southern Russia. She was thrown from a horse when she was a child, and a tall, mysterious man from India miraculously appeared and saved her life by reining the horse and lifting her head so her skull would not hit the ground. In 1851, she met the same man. His name was Master Moria Khan. Master Moria Khan. She had seen him in dreams since childhood. He had come to London to meet her personally, and in Hyde Park, she met him during the first international exhibition. So Master Moria, known as El Moria, this is my picture of him. He lived in Tibet, and she visited him there. Blavatsky, she stayed with him and his friend Kutumi and learned from them. They were her spiritual masters. He was a few hundred years old when she first saw him in childhood, and his appearance never changed the whole time she knew him. This is a picture of Master Kutumi, who was also one of her teachers, spiritual mentors.
Susan, just to let you know, we have just under 10 minutes.
10 minutes, good. Here's another one of Madame Blavatsky's masters. His name is Sanat Kumara, also known as the Lord of the World or Spiritual King of the World and Director of Evolution of the Planet. Sanat Kumara is worshipped in the Hindu religion as the quote-unquote eternal youth. In other words, immortal, always youthful, being of light. These are three masters called the Triumvirate of Shambhala, which is a celestial city above China, and an ascended master retreat. Tibetan Buddhists believe Shambhala is a mystical kingdom that guards sacred, secret spiritual teachings, a heaven of the gods, hidden by mists deep within the Himalayas, encircled by a ring of snow mountains, shaped like an 8-petaled lotus. And Maitreya is known as the 5th Buddha, who comes at the culmination of the world cycle. The new Messiah is the next advent, Lord Maitreya. Buddha is standing on the left side. Sanat Kumara is in the middle on this picture, and Maitreya is on the right side. According to traditional Buddhism, Maitreya appears when the teachings of the current Buddha are completely forgotten, which ends humanity's age of ignorance and births a new world. So we have the past Buddha, and the future Buddha is Maitreya. Past Buddha is Gautama Buddha. So this is known as the triumvirate of Shambhala. And here we have a picture of Sananda. Sananda. Sananda is supposedly one of the 4 sons of Lord Brahma, the creator god. Sananda is also known as the universal cosmic Christ, who embodies the universes, the entire universe, the stars, the galaxies, the solar systems. Everything is contained within the cosmic Christ known as Sananda. So you can call upon Sananda or any of these divine beings I've been talking about. If you want to have cosmic experiences, I suggest you call upon Sananda. According to Alice Bailey from the Theosophical Society, these are the rays of the Ascended Masters, their Ascended Master retreats, their planetary rulers, their chakras, and the jewels they represent. Here's an American who became an Ascended Master. In fact, she was a Mormon. Her name is Annalise Guerin, and you can buy her books actually. They're published by DeVores and Company. Her books are all about ascension and how to attain it. She often calls it translation. She was born in 1899 in Idaho. And because she was a Mormon, and she wrote a book called Ye Are Gods, the Mormon church didn't really cotton to that very well. In fact, her own son-in-law turned her into the Mormon church, and she was excommunicated from the Mormon church for writing the book, Ye Are Gods. In 1952, she hinted to her roommate, who's known simply as Mrs. B. We only know her as Mrs. B, period, the letter B. She hinted to her that she would be going home to the angels soon. In other words, that she was going to ascend. All of her books are about ascension. They're all about attaining immortality. So one evening, Mrs. B noted as she was sitting in her living room and Annalie had gone to bed, Mrs. B noticed a bright light flashing from underneath Annalie's door. The same night at 1:10 a.m., she rushed to Annalie's room to find out what was going on. Annalie wasn't there. Nothing was there. All of her clothes were there, and her dentures, she had taken out her dentures to go to bed. Her dentures were sitting on the bedstand next to her bed. The next day, at 10:30 p.m., Mrs. B was sitting in the living room with her grown son and 2 daughters, and Annalie entered the house wearing a plain blue dress. Her legs were covered with dust and her hair was disheveled. Annalie said to Mrs. B, "So you believe I have translated?" And Mrs. B said, "Yes." And Annalie praised them for their faith, and she asked God to bless them. Suddenly, she transformed into a shining being in white garment, with her hair in golden light, smiling with shining white teeth. Meanwhile, her dentures are sitting on the table still in her bedroom. And she disappeared. So that's the story of Annalise Guerin's translation. Mount Shasta is known as a place where a lot of ascended masters live. And supposedly they live inside the mountain in an ascended master retreat called Telos. And Adama is supposedly the high priest of Telos. This is a picture of him. This is my depiction of ascension. This is my representation of ascension. When you attain ascension, not only have you translated your body into a light body, but you have command over all the laws of nature, over all the 5 elements which are depicted there. So the woman is juggling the 5 elements of earth, air, fire, water, and ether. And she's juggling in her other hand the entire cosmos. So this is living true mastery, living a cosmic life. If you have become an ascended master, you are truly a master of all the elements. And very few people have attained this, as I said. There is a celebration, a festival that happens in India every 12 years called the Kumbh Mela, which is a celebration of immortality. And it comes from an ancient legend of the divine physician, Dhanvantari, the Ayurvedic physician, coming out of the primordial ocean with the vessel, the kumbha, or the pot that holds the nectar of immortality. So that's what he is holding here, the kumbha. It's called the Kumbh Mela, is the name of the festival that happens every 12 years. I've gone to several of the Kumbh Melas. They're extraordinary events where you get to meet all these amazing spiritual masters. There's thousands of them, and they all have tents, and you can go hang out with them and sit with them and enjoy the spiritual vibration that comes from them. It's a great blessing. So Dhanvantari is supposedly the founder of Ayurvedic medicine. Yogananda, who is the author of Autobiography of a Yogi, in 1951, he indicated that he would leave the world soon. He finished his writings and became silent. And then on March 7th of 1952, at a banquet at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles, basically, he died right there in front of everybody. And, but he didn't die. He went into Maha Samadhi. And he ended his life with a poem. He said, "Where Ganges, woods, Himalayan caves, and men dream God, I am hallowed. My body touched that sod." And then he entered Mahasamadhi, and his eyes lifted, his body turned slightly to the right, and he dropped to the floor. However, 20 days later, the mortuary director of the Forest Lawn Cemetery, he said that the preservation of Yogananda's body was the most extraordinary case in our experience. There were no visual signs of bodily decay, odor, mold on the skin, no desiccation of bodily tissues. The state of perfect preservation of a body is, so far as we know from mortuary annals, an unparalleled one. Yogananda's body was apparently in a phenomenal state of immutability. Physical appearance of Yogananda on March 27th was the same as it was on March 7th. And this is the symbol of the rainbow body in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And what happens is, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, is they go into a yurt, a small little hut, when they're about to ascend. They go into the small hut, and then people see above this hut, several days or several weeks or however long it takes, they see what's called a the rainbow body. They see this flash of light. They see a rainbow, a flash of light above this hut, and that is the flash of the Tibetan master becoming an immortal ascended master. And what's left behind in the hut is only these what they're called shariras, or ring cells, which are the remains of these immortal beings of light. And this is my depiction, my picture that I did of our higher self. You see the woman who's standing on the earth, and above her is what's known as her etheric soul self, which is her immortal soul. And then the two gold beings are Christ selves of that person. The blue beings are the I am self, and they're holding a scroll which says Yod He Vav He, meaning I am that I am. The white beings, the two white beings, are the God selves of that person. And then the Holy Spirit, the female aspect of the Holy Spirit, with a beautiful dove above her head. The sun on top is the eternal, immortal Godhead, and the planets and stars represents the cosmic self. So these are all aspects of our own higher self that we can experience.
Susan, only 1 more minute left.
Yes. So this is the soul self of a male person. This is my soul self, actually, the etheric soul self of me. And this is a depiction of a person who experiences this state of higher consciousness, who experiences what I call divine revelation, which is the method that I teach, which you can find out more about at drsusan.org, drsusan.org. I have 13 books in print, and I'm working on a 14th right now, working on a memoir, actually. And you can find out more about me at drsusan.org and also at divinetravels.com, where I take people on trips to sacred destinations, and we have these amazing seminars at sea as well. On cruise ships, I lead amazing conferences on cruise ships. I'd like to invite you to come to them. That's at divinetravels.com. This is another one of my pictures, which is a depiction of a mortal being of light feeding divine energy. All you need to do is ask. Call upon the name of the divine being, ask for them to come, ask for them to bless you, ask for them to heal you. It's all based upon ask and it shall be given unto you. And that's it.